Welcome back to chapter 8, and in this chapter we'll be diving into the different structure and function of the human urinary system. But before that, let's do a quick recap on excretion. In the previous video, we looked at the importance of excretion and the definition of it as well. So to recap, excretion is the removal of metabolic waste products and substances that are in excess. So what are some examples of metabolic waste products that were discussed in the previous lesson? They include carbon dioxide, water, mineral salts, as well as urea. We have multiple excretory organs that span across our entire body, and these excretory organs include your lungs, skin, and kidney. So in 8.2 human urinary system, we'll be looking at how the kidney is involved in removing excess water, mineral salts, as well as urea. So now let's dive in deep by first looking at the overall system as well as the main structures that are found in our human urinary system. So the human urinary system consists of a pair of kidney, a pair of ureter, a urinary bladder, as well as the urethra. So let's dive deep to see what are the different functions played by each of this structure. Before that, let us see the transport system as well as the blood vessels that are involved in this system. As you can see, the aorta would bring blood from the heart to rest of body with the help of various different arteries and arterioles. So blood from the heart will be transported to first the left renal artery, where the blood will undergo filtration as well as reabsorption of important substances that our body needs. So the kidney is quite amazing. It will remove by filtering out toxic and excessive substances and then paying attention to substances that our body needs and reabsorb back into our blood. So it will first go through the kidney artery, left renal artery, before being brought to the kidney, and then the clean filtered blood will be transported to the rest of the body via the renal artery. Alright, so do pay attention to the flow as well as we link it up to the other human system that we have gone through. So for us human, actually our kidneys are found slightly at the back of our body, and we do have two. So in the event where we lose one or donate one in organ transplant, our body is still capable of filtering our blood with just one kidney in place. But bear in mind that these individuals have to pay very careful attention to their lifestyle and diet when they are only left with one. So that's the kidney for you, which the main function is to excrete urea excess water and salt in the form of urine. I do emphasize on the word excess, as there are different fates to water. Alright, water that we need can help to sustain many cell activity, but only excess water and salt will be excreted out through the kidney. Next, the kidney will then collect and gather the urine that will pass through the ureter into the urinary bladder. Right, so the ureter is actually muscular tubes that contract and relax to transport urine into the urinary bladder. The urinary bladder, it's also made up of muscle. So it's actually a muscular bag that is capable of expanding to store more urine. Biologically, it's able to expand and store urine for up to 8 hours, but that's definitely not recommended on a frequent basis, as it will reduce the effectiveness of the human urinary system. Alright. Next, the sphincter muscles. I'd like you to recall, this is not the first time that we have came across the word sphincter muscle. Think about the other organs in our body and where can you find sphincter muscles through our body system. If you think about the stomach, indeed, it can also be found in our eyes as well, which we'll learn in a bit, to help with dilation and constriction of our eye. Alright, and you can also find sphincter muscle in the anus as well, which controls the movement of component substances in and out. Alright, so the sphincter muscle controls the exit of the urine. So why are we able to hold our pee even when we are very urgent? Thanks to the sphincter muscles. Actually, there's a pair of it. Alright. That will relax to allow the urine to pass through and contract to hold all the pee in our bladder. Alright, and lastly, the urethra that will help with the discharge of urine to outside of the body. So out of all the structure, we'll be paying a lot of attention to the kidneys, where the filtration and reabsorption happen. So before I begin talking about the structure of kidney in depth, let's take a look at a video of an actual kidney and how it looks like.
Did you know that your kidneys can filter up to 50 gallons of blood per day? Now, you don't have 50 gallons of blood inside you, but if you put a little meter on both of your renal arteries, you can see that blood would pass through multiple times a day, and that could equal up to 50 gallons. Now, that blood is eventually going to make it out into the renal cortex, or the outer portion of the kidney, where it's going to get rid of some of the waste products. Those waste products, along with some fluid, will enter into these tiny urinary tubules, which will get bigger and bigger and bigger, and this urine of yours will go down the pee tube, which we really call the ureter, and hopefully make it to the toilet. Now, that cleaned blood will leave through a different pathway through this flattened renal vein, and you should be excited about that because now that blood's been filtered and you've gotten rid of some of those waste products.
Alright, so our kidneys are very fantastic organs. It's so small but very mighty. It is able to filter up to 50 gallons of blood daily, and it works effectively to not just remove waste but also balance water, fluid, and also regulate the amount of minerals as well. So if I were to put the respective components that it works on, it will focus on removing urea, balance water, as well as regulate salts and iron in our blood flow. So the kidneys also plays a part in controlling blood pressure and producing hormones, but these are secondary functions that we will not be focusing on, but we will be looking at how filtering of blood takes place as well as reabsorption of important substances in this particular chapter. So for the kidney, most importantly, you need to know that it is capable of filtering blood and also capable of reabsorbing useful substances back to blood. So let's take a look at the cross section first, all right, to see what are the different parts of the kidney. So when it's divided across the cross section, we can divide the kidney into two specific regions. All right, so I'll use the dotted line to separate the two different region that we are talking about. So the first region is the cortex, which I will refer to as the outer region of the kidney, and this is where filtration happens. Okay, this is the start of the whole process of cleaning the blood. So in the outer region where the cortex is, mainly filtration of blood takes place, and two very specific structure of the nephron, which I will go in depth, can be found there. All right, let me come back to that in a bit. All right, next is the medulla. All right, it's not medusa, by the way, it's medulla, which refers to as the inner region where the other parts of the nephrons are found in the kidney. And in the medulla, all right, the main function is reabsorption of useful substances. Okay, so let me go to nephron before I come back to the renal pyramid. So nephron is actually the unit, smallest unit that can be found inside the kidney. That can be found. So there are so many nephrons, 1,000 over nephrons that are spread across the entire kidney, and this is where, okay, the site of filtration and reabsorption take place. Okay, so just like let me give an example. Just like in chapter 6, we learned that the artery can branch out into smaller arterioles to transport blood from the heart to the rest of the body, and the exchange actually take place in the capillary instead. Likewise, in the kidney, okay, the parallel can be drawn. Okay, the smallest unit would be the nephron. All right, that will gather together and to collect and gather the urine. Okay, so it's like small little tubes, right, nephron, and then it will come together in, so many nephrons will make up the renal pyramid, and you can see that all the renal pyramid eventually combines into, okay, the ureter that will bring the urine to the bladder. So this is how it's being organized inside the kidney. All right, so that's the purpose of the renal pyramid, which is to focus on collecting and channeling urine to ureter. Okay, so this is just a broad overview of the cross-section of the kidney before finally we examine the nephron, which is made up of even more microscopic structure. So you can take this down in your notes by pausing the video. Alright, just to emphasize and summarize, the outer region, it's focuses on filtration of blood, while the inner region of the kidney is involved in reabsorption. Take note, the nephron is actually spans across both outer and inner region. So if we go back to the picture over here, you only see one nephron in this diagram, okay, labeled in blue. Okay, so this is actually one nephron. All right, and there are actually many nephrons that is connected together. All right, let me just do a few drawing loop. So you can imagine there are many nephrons that will combine together within the renal pyramid, that will combine with the rest of the pyramid together, or the urine inside the ureter to be transported out of the kidney to the rest of the body, while clean, filtered blood would return to the rest of the body through the renal vein. Okay, so the blood carrying all the toxic substances and excess substances will be brought to the kidney via the renal artery, and while clean and filtered blood leads into the renal vein, the remaining toxic substances and excess substances will be found inside the urine that will be discharged out of the kidney. Alright, so you could pause the video to take down all this before we move on to the nephron. So before we look at the different microscopic structure found in a nephron, let's take a look at a video.
Do you want to grow your wealth but you don't know where to start? The stock market is one of the best ways you can build your wealth.
The bladder is about the size and getting rid of waste material, toxins, and excess water in the bloodstream.
So you could see that there are many thousands and millions of nephrons that can be found in each kidney, and I want you to pay attention to how they actually function in the urinary system.
In the kidney, there are millions of tiny blood filters called nephrons. Nephrons are so small, you can see them only with a high-powered microscope. Each nephron is made up of a very small filter called a glomerulus, which is attached to a tubule. As blood passes through the nephron, fluid and waste products are filtered out into the ureters. The ureters are narrow tubes that carry urine from the kidneys to the bladder. Muscles in the ureter walls continually tighten and relax, forcing urine downward, away from the kidneys, not allowing them to back up or stand still. The urine then enters the bladder. The bladder is about the size and shape of a pear when empty. The bladder's walls relax and expand to store urine, allowing urination to be controlled. The normal capacity of the bladder is 400 to 600 milliliters. The bladder has a direct line of communication with the brain. It is full of receptors. an invisible fill line that tells your brain how full your bladder is. When your bladder is full, the nerves alert the person that it is time to urinate. Then the brain signals the bladder muscles to tighten, which squeezes urine out of the bladder. At the same time, the brain signals the sphincter muscles to relax, to let urine exit the bladder through the urethra. Urine is about 95% water and 5% waste products, including urea, creatine, ammonia, and uric acid. The urethral sphincters, either male or female, are two muscular structures that regulate the outflow of urine and help keep urine from leaking by closing tightly.
Alright, so I hope you can see the connection between kidney with the rest of the structure. But right now, we'll be going into one kidney tubule known as the nephron to find out a little bit more about the different microscopic structure that can be found inside. So we are just zooming into one. So if I were to use a highlighter, there are actually multiple over here. Alright, if I could use, this is one on its own, this is another one. So you can see that there are multiple tubules that are found within one kidney. So we are only looking at one nephron right now. So over here, if we zoom into a single nephron, these are the various structure that can be found within it. So let me bring you through each and explain a little bit what it does. Okay, but for now, focus on recognizing the structure, and we will talk more about the processes that happens in each structure in the next part of the chapter. So when the blood comes in over here, right, it will first pass through this first structure in blue called the Bowman's capsule. Alright, so the Bowman's capsule is actually found in the outer region. Alright, so let me differentiate over here for you. The darker grey area is actually the cortex, the outer region, and then the medulla, alright, is the inner region, which is white in color over in this picture. So it's a cup-like structure where filtration first takes place. So the liquid, the filtrate, okay, so I'll use the word filtrate right now since filtration happened. Filtrate will continue flowing in the nephron. Okay, so the filtrate will continue through the next structure known as the proximal convoluted tubule because it's very coiled. Alright, sometimes in some textbook is also referred to as the first convoluted tubule. It's the first structure that the filtrate will pass through, alright, and eventually it will straighten out in the medulla, and the next structure it will pass through is known as the loop of Henle. Actually, it's written in this manner. Alright, but in exam, if you give me Henle without the accent on the E, it's still acceptable. Alright. So the loop of Henle is actually a U-shaped portion that will span across the cortex as well as the medulla. Okay, so it will return back into the cortex up, and then finally it will enter a distal convoluted tubule, sometimes known as the second convoluted tubule in the nephron, which will continue to channel the filtrate towards the collecting duct. So in the collecting duct, alright, by then it's the urine that is produced from multiple different nephrons. So the collecting duct is actually shared between multiple nephrons. All right, so if I were to extend it, the urine is produced in the nephron, collected in the collecting duct, then to the renal pyramid, which will gather, or all the collecting duct you can see over here in orange. Okay, so you can see all the different collecting duct will eventually collect within the pyramid before it enters the ureter. All right, to gather or the urine. Okay, so it's not quite function that I'm describing over here. What I've did in this table is to just describe how the different structure actually looks like in the nephron. Okay, so do note that several nephron links to a single collecting duct that will channel and the urine to the ureter and eventually the bladder. So now that we are done looking at the nephron, I will include the blood capillaries as well as the different blood vessels that surround the kidney. Because why is the blood vessels such an important component is because the blood is being filtered in the nephron. So the source. Okay, so this is the source that the nephron depends on to do the necessary. So what happens is the blood will first enter the kidney from the heart through the renal artery. Apologies, please include this missing word in your notes. And the clean and filtered blood will leave through the renal vein. So recall in our chapter on transport in transport system, artery can be further branched into arterioles and then blood capillary, and many blood capillaries can bind together into a venule before many venule will bind together into a vein. So in the context of urinary system, all right, the renal artery will be branched out into smaller arterioles over here. As you can see, there are two kinds of arterioles that can be found in the nephron. All right, the afferent and efferent. You may wonder, like, why are there two? Okay, later on when we talk about the filtration and reabsorption, you'll appreciate why there are two different arterioles flanking this knot of blood capillaries. So the glomerulus is actually blood capillaries. So it's a complex web of capillaries. So you can see it can be branched from artery to arteriole and then capillaries, and then become arteriole, but further branches out into blood capillaries again before they combine together into a venule to channel the clean and filtered blood to the renal vein. It may not make quite sense. It may not make sense at the point of time without a diagram. So let me show you a diagram to illustrate this over here for you. All right, but whatever we have learned in the previous chapter still hold true. Right, the blood capillary becomes venule, and then it will gather into a common renal vein where all the clean and filtered blood will be circulated around the body. So let's take a look at this to identify where the blood vessels are. All right, so I recommend you to take out a highlighter right now and follow me as I highlight. So the yellow highlight would be the blood vessels surrounding nephrons. Okay, so let's do that first. All right, so you can see pay attention to in red first. Okay, so follow my pointer. Blood from the renal artery will enter the kidney, and then it will branch off into afferent, starts with a A, so that's the first afferent arteriole in each nephron, which will go into a web of blood capillary, the glomerulus. So from the renal artery to the afferent arteriole to glomerulus. I'm not sure why I can't highlight the word renal artery, but yes, this is the blood part of the blood vessels. Okay, and then afterwards the blood capillary glomerulus will then combine into afferent arteriole as seen over here in my arrow, and then the blood vessel, the arteriole, will then wrap itself around the tubules, as you can see. Okay, it will wrap itself around the tubules, okay, for the exchange of materials and also the reabsorption of substances back into the blood. All right, and then it will combine into a venule. Okay, you can see over here, it will combine back. Okay, it will combine back into a venule. All right, and then multiple venule will combine into a renal vein that will bring the clean and filtered blood out of kidney. Okay, and rest of body. All right, then next I will use another color to show you the different structure. All right, ultimately those that I've not highlighted are actually structure that are found inside the nephron. All right, so that includes the Bowman's capsule. All right, Bowman's capsule. Okay, let me use another color. All right, so after filtration happen, okay, the filtrate will continue to move through the proximal convoluted tubule, okay, and then enter the loop of Henle in blue. It goes through the loop of Henle. All right, the filtrate continues moving through, and it will be transported to the distal convoluted tubule into the collecting duct where the urine will be collected. All right, so what makes up part of the nephron includes Bowman's capsule, proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle, distal convoluted tubule, and the collecting duct. All right, so if I can use another color to avoid confusion, the two main process that happen is filtration of blood, where the Bowman's capsule and glomerulus are. So these two structures are involved in the first process of filtration of blood, and then the rest of the structure of the nephron surrounded by the blood capillary, it's where reabsorption of useful substances occur to go back into the blood, so we don't lose too much of that, and then eventually, okay, urine collection will happen at the end of the nephron. Okay, so let's put this down into our notes first. So the afferent arteriole, how do I remember which one comes first? A comes before E. So afferent arteriole will first branch out from the renal artery to carry blood towards the glomerulus. Okay, so the glomerulus is actually a complex web. It's just blood capillaries all knotted up that is that is found within the Bowman's capsule. So the Bowman's capsule is a cup-like structure, and then the blood vessels, afferent, okay, not glomerulus, efferent. So A and E, afferent, efferent, arterial, and in the center is the glomerulus. All right, this is where blood travels at high pressure for filtration to occur. All right, and then the efferent arteriole will then transport blood away from the glomerulus, okay, to the rest of the blood system. So that's all I have for structure. I know it's a lot to absorb. Take some time to pause the video, look through the diagram, ask question in class, and I'll leave you with the checkpoint question, okay, for you to do, which I will go through when I see you the next time, the next lesson that we have. But before that, let me give you a little sneak peek on the next part of the chapter, 8.3, ultrafiltration and reabsorption, which you keep hearing me talk about during this chapter, but with something visual to help you out.
波经疗法和那个传统按摩，我们这个波经疗法主要是
The kidneys are organs of the urinary system. They regulate the water content of the body and remove metabolic waste through the formation of urine. How does urine form? When blood reaches the glomerulus, it is maintained at a relatively high pressure. The high blood pressure forces water and small soluble molecules, such as glucose and amino acids in the plasma, through the thin walls of the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule into the capsular space. This process is called ultrafiltration. The fluid that is filtered into the Bowman's capsule is called glomerular filtrate. The filtrate has a similar composition to plasma. However, no plasma proteins and blood cells are found in the glomerular filtrate because they are too large to pass through the walls of the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule. After ultrafiltration, the glomerular filtrate flows through the kidney tubule. In the kidney tubule, useful substances in the filtrate are absorbed back into the surrounding capillaries so that they are not lost from the body. This process is called reabsorption. It occurs mainly in the proximal convoluted tubule. In the proximal convoluted tubule, all glucose, amino acids, and most salt are reabsorbed by diffusion and active transport. As many solute molecules are removed from the filtrate, the water potential of the filtrate rises. Therefore, water in the filtrate enters the blood by osmosis. The reabsorption of water raises the concentration of urea in the filtrate. Thus, urea in the filtrate diffuses into the blood. Further reabsorption of substances takes place in the remaining part of the kidney tubule. After reabsorption, the remaining filtrate in the collecting duct is called urine, which will be passed out of the body when we urinate.
Alright, I know it's a lot, but it's just a sneak peek and I will carry on in the classroom. So please fill up 8.1 and 8.2 before we see each other next Tuesday and try out the checkpoint question, which I will go through in the next lesson.